So we know that the influence of the environment has on little kids starts from when they're born and how we interact with them. And there's really critical windows through toddler years and then early primary school that will inform the people they become. There's always time to do things, but those years are really critical. And all the awful stuff that's happening that you're talking about, those kids, those adults were not destined to be like that. The world has molded them like that.
So what can parents and those who are helping to raise kids, what can they do to set up boys in particular for a time when they do encounter those messages online?
Yeah, and I think it is how we raise boys. I think I'm lucky to have a gorgeous daughter and a son, and it's my responsibility of how I raise my son that won't be a concern, as opposed to making my daughter think she has to worry about those things. And it's horrible to think about. The things we can do is think about, emotional development. I meet kids in clinic all the time who are teenagers but still stuck in toddler years in terms of how good they are at regulating their emotions, because no one's taught them. And we can teach kids that all through the life course. They often have fragile self-esteem, learning difficulties, mental illness. 50% of kids in primary school who have mental illness will never see a clinician. That's horrible, and we need to do better.
Particularly when kids enter their teen years, it can be hard for parents to cut through. So what hope do they have in countering those messages if they can't get a receptive ear or much of a look in from their kids?
Yeah, it takes a long time, but you will. I meet, the most shut down teens who don't want to talk to parents at all. And when they start prioritizing connection and just trying to be non-judgmental and making sure the majority of time that we interact with our kids, we're just enjoying them and not judging them or dismissing their emotions or the challenges they're having, then they see us as safe harbors and they can come to us and say, I'm feeling like this. I saw my friends do this. And then we just want to explore with them from a perspective of curiosity. I wonder what the other person felt like. How are you feeling? Remembering all emotions are valid. And I think too much we push down in boys having any emotional expression, because that's not tough. And we really idolize physicality and, being tough and gritting your teeth and going and fighting people if you disagree with them, as opposed to conflict resolution or understanding another person's perspective. And girls from the toddler years are way better at that and often stay better at that. And so how do we prioritize that in boys and set up those role models and help them understand that it's okay to be upset and angry or sad or afraid? And these are the ways that we can support them through that.
And on that point, you often hear people say, oh, boys will be boys. But as a developmental paediatrician, what is, generally speaking, developmentally normal for boys?
Yeah, they're much more likely to be assertive than girls from a young age, and girls have much more ability to have pro-social skills, sharing, empathy, compassion, those things, taking the perspective of others. From 3 to 4, girls do really well at that. And so the reality is that assertiveness that boys have, we kind of idolize it a bit, but it's actually often hostile. And my little daughter, often when a boy comes near her, she gets ready for whatever she's holding to be taken off her. And it's about how do we change that expectation in her and lead those boys to better pro-social behaviours, so they're not just doing that because what we know is that the society around us has a big influence on who we become. So it's not just parents' responsibility, and teachers are holding so much of this too. We need to better support educators because they can't do it alone either.
You spoke a little bit about this earlier, but through the work that you do, what lies below the surface when some men and boys demonstrate these particularly toxic traits?
Yeah, so they're often have insecure self-esteem. They've often gone through, like my podcast and my book and everything is about most of these kids not getting, our wait list is getting over 2.5 years long. But I can always find a reason when I meet these kids that they're like this. They're often quite insecure, but they are aggressive and they have a really primitive developmental approach to feeling insecure, which is externalizing behavior and anger. So you have those people that like flip out and they're angry because they can't handle their emotions. But then you also have the calm people that have misogynistic or homophobic comments and things like that. And they're stuck in a really primitive moral development perspective that we can actually elevate them to if we connect with them and say we can do better than that. And storytelling, role modeling, the narratives we have out there, who we prop up and say, aren't these people amazing? All of those things are things we can influence. And that's how we knock down some of the really toxic, scary narratives that are out there. We put better ones in their place.
These topics can often be really complicated and difficult. What if parents or carers are feeling ill-equipped or maybe awkward about raising these issues with their kids?
Yeah, I don't think you have to have all the answers. I think just exploring how kids are feeling is the first step, and thinking, how much do I prioritize the relationship and just enjoying this person? And often I meet amazing parents in clinic who are just stuck in this loop of conflict and trying to change kids and they just battle. But if we actually connect with them first and then try and understand what their perspective is, oh, they're just trying to fit in because that's really important through the teen years, or they're in primary school and they're really worried they're not as good as everyone else because they might have a learning difficulty. How do we give them opportunities to feel success in the things that they care about? How do we reinforce the behaviors where they care about someone else? Those are really, healthy forms of masculinity where it's actually okay to be upset, it's okay to cry, it's okay to fail, and we express that and we look for support from others. We don't think that's something we should deal with on our own. And parents are the amazing people that do that, hours and hours just with kids who are really struggling, and they're phenomenal for that. And a lot of my work is just how do we better support parents, educators, GPs, amazing maternal child health workers, social workers. They're all holding these kids, and we need to support them better because otherwise they'll become the kids that are running around doing all the antisocial behaviour we're hearing about.